Okay, quick question. How would you feel if I told you that right now, in 2026, there could be four other species of human alive on Earth, and you just see them at the grocery store? Not aliens, not Bigfoot. Actual humans, just a different flavor of us. Sounds insane, right? Except it's not a hypothetical. It's literally what Earth looked like 40,000 years ago. Multiple human species walking the same planet at the same time, like some kind of prehistoric group chat with way too many participants. And then, one by one, they all left the chat. Except us. We are the only ones who never got removed from the server. And honestly, we have no idea why. Here's the part that should mess with your head a little. We didn't win some big dramatic war against the other humans. There was no final boss battle, no epic showdown, no last stand on a cliff at sunset. It was quieter than that, weirder than that. More like watching someone's Netflix account slowly get deactivated because nobody logged in for a year. No warning, no goodbye, just gone. So today we're doing an autopsy, not on a person, on entire species. We're going through the missing persons file of humanity, one branch at a time. The ridiculously long-lived Homo erectus, the wrongly slandered Neanderthals, the ghost-like Denisovans we barely have bones for, and the actual real-life hobbits that lived in Indonesia. Yes, hobbits. Real ones. And by the end, we're going to ask the question that should honestly keep you up tonight. If they all disappeared, what makes us so sure we're not next? Because here's the twist. Nobody puts in the thumbnail. Being human was never supposed to be a solo project. For almost the entire history of our genus, human meant several different species awkwardly sharing a planet. We are the weird ones. We're the plot twist. The fact that there's only one kind of human left isn't the natural state of things, it's the exception. So let's rewind the clock and meet the family, all of them. Because before there was us, there was a whole cast of characters evolution was auditioning, and most of them didn't make the final cut for reasons we're still trying to figure out. Let's start with the one who honestly should get more respect than he does, Homo erectus, the guy who was already old news before Neanderthals even showed up to the party. So, Homo erectus. If human species were bands, Homo erectus is the group that was already legendary before your favorite band even existed. This guy shows up around 2 million years ago, which, for context, is so long ago that a million years is basically a rounding error to him. And Homo erectus was not some clumsy prototype. He was built. Long legs, shorter arms, a body basically designed for one thing, walking really, really far and not dying. This was the first human to say, you know what? Africa's cool, but have you seen Asia? And just go. No Google Maps, no snacks packed for the road, just vibes and endurance. He had a lower skull, a heavier brow, a smaller brain than ours, but a way bigger brain than anything that came before. He made tools, he hunted, he scavenged. He adapted to changing environments across a genuinely absurd stretch of geography, and he did this for over 1 million years. Let that sink in for a second. Homo sapiens, us, the advanced ones with smartphones and existential dread, have been around for roughly 300,000 years. Homo erectus casually outlasted that by like 4x before he even started slowing down. If longevity was the whole game, he wins. He's not the rookie. He's the guy who retired a legend and then, weirdly, still eventually disappeared anyway. The last known Homo erectus fossils come from a place called Ngandong on the island of Java, dated to somewhere around 117,000 to 108,000 years ago. By that point, the world had changed underneath him. Other human species were around. Climate was doing its unpredictable thing. Forests were expanding and retreating like a bad Wi-Fi signal, and after over 1 million years of showing up to work, Homo erectus just didn't clock in anymore. We don't know exactly why. Maybe his populations got isolated into little pockets too small to bounce back from a bad year. Maybe he couldn't adapt fast enough to a changing world. Maybe newer humans outcompeted him for the same resources. But his story teaches lesson number 1, and it's a brutal one. Surviving for an unbelievably long time does not mean you're exempt from ending. Longevity isn't immunity. Now let's talk about the human species everyone thinks they already understand, but absolutely does not. The Neanderthals. For decades, pop culture turned Neanderthals into the punchline, the grunt, drag woman by hair caveman stereotype. That image is not just outdated, it's basically slander. Neanderthals weren't a failed rough draft of us. They were a completely different and honestly pretty successful answer to the same brutal question. How do you survive an actual ice age? Their bodies were shorter, stockier, built like they were made for cold, wide chests, strong arms, thick bones, the kind of physique you'd want if the gym was hunting a mammoth with a sharpened stick. Big noses, heavy brows, low skulls, all functional, all built for a world made of snow and scarcity. They hunted large animals at close range, which was as dangerous as it sounds. Scientists have found that their skeletal injuries look eerily similar to modern rodeo riders, the kind of damage you get from getting way too personal with something that could kill you in one hit. They used fire. They made tools. There's real evidence they cared for injured members of their group. Some even used pigments and ornaments, which, translated, means Neanderthals were out here accessorizing. They weren't shadows in a dark cave. They were people, just a different kind. And they survived like that for hundreds of thousands of years. Then Homo sapiens started moving into their territory, and after about 40,000 years ago, the physical evidence of Neanderthals simply stops. The old, lazy answer is, we showed up, we were smarter, we wiped them out. Cinematic. Satisfying. Probably wrong, or at least not that simple. Here's the more likely story. Neanderthals lived in small, scattered populations. And small populations are basically walking around with the low battery warning permanently on. One bad winter, one failed hunt season, one disease outbreak. A birth rate that dips just slightly too low for just slightly too long. That's it. That's all it takes to erase a group that's already spread thin. And ancient DNA backs this up. Some late Neanderthal populations show low genetic diversity, meaning they may have already been running on fumes before Homo sapiens ever became a serious factor in the equation. Add in a climate that kept flipping between cold snaps and warm spells, rearranging which animals and plants were even available to eat, and you've got a species trying to survive on a planet that keeps changing the rules of the game mid-match. Then toss in a new competitor, us, with wider social networks, longer supply chains of ideas and tools, maybe faster innovation, better ways of linking scattered groups together, not necessarily stronger, not necessarily smarter in every category, just more flexible, in the one way that ended up mattering most. So when Neanderthals disappeared, it probably wasn't one great dramatic war. It was losing 1,000 tiny, unglamorous battles against isolation, against weather, against competition, against time, until there just weren't enough of them left to keep the lights on. Now, if Neanderthals are the well-documented X, the Denisovans are basically humanity's mystery situationship. We have almost nothing on them. For Neanderthals, we've got skulls, bones, tools, burial sites, practically a full dating profile. For Denisovans, the entire story kicks off with a single tiny finger bone found in a Siberian cave. One finger bone. That's the introduction. And yet that fragment was enough to blow up the whole family tree because DNA testing revealed it wasn't Neanderthal. Wasn't Homo sapiens. It was something else entirely. A species we didn't even know existed. Identified from a bone fragment so small it looks like it belongs in a keychain, not a museum. Denisovans may have roamed a huge chunk of Asia, Siberia, the Tibetan Plateau, possibly Southeast Asia, but their fossil record is almost insultingly thin. A finger bone, some teeth, a jaw fragment here and there. For years, scientists genuinely didn't know what their faces looked like. It's like knowing someone's entire personality through 3 text messages and 0 profile pictures. But here's where it gets wild. Even though their body count in the fossil record is tiny, their genetic footprint is massive. Certain populations in Oceania and parts of Asia carry real, measurable Denisovan ancestry today. Tibetans specifically inherited a gene variant linked to surviving high altitude, straight from Denisovan-related ancestors. Which means a species that vanished tens of thousands of years ago is still, right now, helping living people breathe easier in thin mountain air. That's not a species. That's a ghost doing you a favor from beyond the grave. The most recent confirmed Denisovan fossil evidence is around 40,000 years old, with some genetic hints suggesting isolated groups may have hung on until roughly 30,000 years ago. After that, nothing. No fossils, no trace, just silence. We genuinely don't know why they disappeared. Maybe their populations were always thin and scattered across that huge range. Maybe some groups got absorbed into incoming Homo sapiens populations, rather than dying out completely. Maybe climate shifts fractured their habitat piece by piece. The honest answer is, we don't have enough evidence to know for sure. And that's exactly what makes the Denisovans so unsettling. A human species can vanish so completely that almost nothing survives except fragments of code buried in our own DNA. No cities, no monuments, no stories. Just genetic leftovers. And then, just when you think this story can't get any stranger, enter the hobbits. Yes, actual hobbits on the island of Flores in Indonesia. Scientists uncovered the remains of a tiny ancient human, and I mean tiny, standing around 1 meter tall with a brain to match. officially named Homo floresiensis, unofficially nicknamed the hobbits, because, honestly, what else are you supposed to call a species of pint-sized humans that just casually existed? At first, researchers assumed they had to be diseased modern humans, or some abnormal isolated population, but the evidence kept pointing somewhere far more astonishing. This was a genuinely separate human species, shaped entirely by island life. Islands do bizarre things to evolution. Big animals shrink, small animals grow. It's called island dwarfism, and Homo floresiensis might be one of the most dramatic examples of it in our entire family tree. And these tiny humans weren't just surviving, they were thriving on an island packed with giant birds, Komodo dragons, and dwarf elephants called stegodon. Imagine being 3 feet tall and sharing your neighborhood with a Komodo dragon. That's not survival, that's a horror movie with a really specific cast. Their fossils at Liangbua are dated to roughly 100,000 to 60,000 years ago, with stone tools linked to them lasting until around 50,000 years ago. And that date is genuinely haunting, because that's right around when modern humans were moving through the same region. Then, like every other branch on this tree, Homo floresiensis vanishes. Maybe the island's climate shifted, maybe their prey declined, maybe a volcanic eruption disrupted the whole ecosystem in one violent afternoon. Maybe Homo sapiens arrived and added just enough extra pressure to tip the scale. On a small island, you don't need a global catastrophe to wipe out a species. You just need a chain of local problems. Less water, less prey, more competition, one bad eruption, one bad stretch of generations, and an entire human species can be erased. So here's the question that's been sitting quietly in the back of this whole video. Waiting for its turn, why did Homo sapiens make it when literally none of the others did? And I need you to resist the easy answer here, because the easy answer is wrong. It's tempting to say because we were smarter, but Neanderthals were intelligent. They cared for their sick, made tools, wore ornaments. Denisovans adapted to some of the harshest environments on the planet. Homo erectus survived for over 1 million years, longer than we've even existed. Homo floresiensis thrived on an island that sounds like a fever dream. So no, intelligence alone can't be the answer, because everybody had some version of it. The real answer might be something quieter, and honestly, a little more humbling: connection. Homo sapiens appear to have been unusually good at building big, sprawling social networks. Not just tight little family units, actual webs of people, tools, ideas, and information stretching across huge distances. And that changes everything. If one group failed, the knowledge didn't die with them, because it already existed somewhere else. If one region turned hostile, people could move, because they had somewhere to move to. If one tool worked, it didn't stay trapped in a single valley. It spread like a really slow, prehistoric version of a viral TikTok trend. That might be our actual superpower, not the individual brain. The network between brains, other human species had culture too, but ours might have traveled farther, mutated faster, and looped in more people than anyone else's ever did. And when the planet got unstable, which it constantly was, that mattered more than raw strength or brain power ever could. A connected species can absorb shocks that an isolated one simply cannot survive. But let's not get too full of ourselves here, because it wasn't destiny. It wasn't some cosmic decree that Homo sapiens were meant to be the last ones standing. Luck mattered, geography mattered, timing mattered, population size mattered. We may have made it partly because we were adaptable, and partly because we just happened to be in the right places with the right numbers at the right moments. That's not a victory lap. That's a coin flip that landed our way. And here's the part I really want you to sit with. None of these other humans were practice rounds. They weren't rough drafts evolution scribbled out before finally getting to the real thing, us. Homo erectus wasn't unfinished. Neanderthals weren't a downgrade. Denisovans and the Flora's hobbits weren't failed experiments waiting to be corrected. They were their own complete stories, their own histories, their own entire ways of being human. And now every single one of them is gone. Homo erectus, after more than 1 million years of showing up, Neanderthals after surviving an actual ice age. Denisovans reduced to a finger bone and a genetic afterglow that still helps people breathe at altitude today. Homo floresiensis, the tiny island humans who vanished right as we were arriving at their door. So when we say the word human now, we only mean one thing: Homo sapiens. And that's not because we were the best version, it's because every other version disappeared. We're not standing at the top of some evolutionary ladder looking down at everyone who didn't make it. We're the last surviving branch of a tree that used to be full of life. And if their extinctions teach us anything, it's this. Dying out was never reserved for the weak. It came for the isolated, the unlucky, the overly specialized, the outnumbered, the ones living through change faster than their bodies or their societies could keep up with. So maybe the real question isn't, why did we survive when they didn't? Maybe it's this. Are we still doing the one thing that actually saved us? Are we still staying connected? Because if we ever stop, the last human species might end up writing the exact same ending everyone else got. If this made you rethink what human even means, hit subscribe because next time we're going even further back to the ancestor that started this whole messy branching family in the first place.